Welcome back all. Thanks as ever for getting in touch, sharing your thoughts and opinions. The best place to do so, comment section below. And if you have a longer story, maybe with some pictures, you can email hi@tuesdayatdobbs.com. Oh, I've got some stuff this week. It was so hard trimming this week's podcast down because there was an unlimited amount of amazing content. So thank you all so much. I'm going to start this week with Jack. Freddy. I am 32 years old and I've been riding since 16. I've owned all types of bikes from Harley Davidsons to BMW GS's or BMW GS Adventures, BMW K1600 GT and everything in between. I currently have a 2002 BMW R1150R, pictures attached, which I bought 4 years ago for £2,500 at the time. I've spent a little over £1,200, but this is just on parts to keep the bike in top running order, doing all of the work myself to save as much money as possible. I've recently started commuting 300 miles a week, so I bought a Honda CB500X for the commute, and I've kept my 1150R purely as the resale on these types of bikes is now so low, and I'm now so attached to the bike after bringing her up to par that I just can't justify selling it for the circa £1,500 that I would get back on it. I know I'll have more big bills to come, such as the clutch, the final drive, etc, etc. And I'm sure this will put many people off buying old classics that require high levels of maintenance, as general wear and expenses or expensive components such as clutch, suspension, etc. begin to show after 20 years. Jack, you fired something up here for me. Lovely looking BMW. I really like these, and you're right, these represent superb value for money. But old BMW motorcycles, just like old BMW cars, they drop in price faster and more steeply and lower than almost anything else on the market. I don't know if there's a brand that drops so quickly and so low as BMWs do. Take a look at these examples that I've picked out to try and hit home my point. I will start with, Jack, I tell you what I'll do. I'll start with your BMW R1150R, 2002 model, same as yours, listed 2 months ago, £1,200. I think these are really good looking bikes. The owner describes it as in average condition for the age or for the year, 52,000 miles on the clock, but a good, solid, dependable, reliable bike. And that's £1,200. What else can you get for that? Exactly the same year. Mild bike in exactly the old colour. I'm even wondering if it is mine. No, it can't be. But 2002 model Suzuki Bandit, listed 2 months ago, exactly the same as the BMW, and that is £1,500. Now, bear in mind, these are just list prices. I know we don't know what they're going to sell for, but my point is this. Imagine back in 2002, how much more expensive it would have been to have to buy that BMW compared to this absolutely run-of-the-mill, really as basic as you can get, Suzuki Bandit 600, yet 22 years on, the prices are, well, almost on parity, but actually the BMW is even cheaper than the Bandit. But don't think this is only for motorcycles, no. The cars suffer a similar fate to the bikes. Look at this. This is a 2010 BMW 3 Series. This is a car that has full service history, 80,000 miles on the clock, and I have even made sure to pick a petrol-engined car, so you don't have to worry about any of the ULEZ, any of these emissions for diesels. This is a legit car, £2,200 for a 14-year-old model. But then you can look here, you get the exact same year, Hyundai i10 2010 model, similar mileage, £1,500. BMW's basically dropped down to the price of the cheapest hatchback on the market after just a decade or so. It's phenomenal. What it means on the used market, however, though, is that you can buy a vehicle that you had really only dreamt about when it was brand new, and suddenly a decade or so on, you can buy your dream vehicle. It's, from a used market point of view, very, very exciting. Jack, thank you for that. Lovely looking BMW. On now to Paramarki. Freddy, regarding... Ooh, listen to this. Freddy, regarding the dropped bike costs. This is carrying on from the conversation. What are the worst repair bills that any of you have experienced for just having your bike dropped? Not in some kind of high-speed crash, just your bike being dropped on its side. From Mark. Freddy, my story in July of this year. I was stationary on my brand new Honda CRF 300 Rally with 100 miles on the clock. A truck decided to reverse without checking and knocked me over. The result? Total loss, requiring £6,100 to get the bike back to the same as new condition. So it was written off. Also, I was offered by the insurers an equivalent bike to use whilst mine was being assessed. This is interesting. The third-party insurers were charged at £125 a day for me to have this similar condition, similar age bike as a backup while mine was getting repaired. But this bike that I was given was sat in my garage unused. It went back 4 months later without me having done a single mile on it. That cost alone would buy 2 brand new Honda CRF 300 Rallies and then some. On top of that, however, there were other costs such as personal injury and various expenses. I worked out that my stationary fall cost the third-party insurance company around £30,000 to settle. No wonder all of our premiums are sky high. Mark. Yeah, Mark, that gets it. That is the most eye-opening cost for a stationary drop on a bike. Thank you so much for sharing that. On to Charlton. Freddy, Kawasaki ZZR 600. I have one of these bikes pictured, and at the moment you can get an immaculate condition one for under £2,000. Produced from 1990 until 2007, which is an incredibly long run, meaning that parts are widely available. I have the last model year of 2007. Yes, it has carbs, however, it still starts first time, always has done, and has one of the best, most linear engines I've ever ridden. It's 98 horsepower, fully fed, so excellent wind protection, wide, comfortable seat, and also a glove box. And the best bit is it gets 62 miles per gallon on average. That is very, very good for a 98 horsepower bike. Fantastic bike for the current economic climate. I also predict that 1990s sports bikes are going to be the next retro classic. Yamaha have already foreseen this with their release of the XSR 900, so it's likely these rock bottom prices will maintain or slightly increase in the coming years. Being a 2007 model, my bike is automatically ULEZ compliant. That is London's ultra low emission zone. Even though it's a carbed bike, it's still ULEZ compliant. But that also means that older bikes can also pass the ULEZ emissions tests if required. That is excellent advice. So if you have one of these bikes, maybe 2002, 2004 model, and you're freaking out that you can't ride it into London because it doesn't pass the emissions requirements, get it tested. It's probably going to pass. Carrying on with Charlton. And also it has a ram air system, meaning the induction noise spits and growls at just 5,000 revs, making it incredibly fun at legal speeds. 35 miles an hour, and you will get that incredible sound. Charlton, I like these bikes. They're 195 kilos dry, And they're very interesting because this is a proper out-and-out sports bike from Kawasaki. In fact, it was Kawasaki's flagship 600cc bike. The reason a lot of you will know almost nothing about this bike is because it was overshadowed fairly quickly. Came out in 1990, as Charlton said, but in 1995, Kawasaki came along with the ZX6R, and this was a much more sportier bike of its time. This bike, the ZX6R, was the exact bike that everyone was desperate to own. And as soon as this came along, it stole all of the limelight, and the ZZR 600, although it carried on selling until 2007, it was always a bike that would take the back seat to the flashier ZX6R, and that's why you can get really good deals on it. Take a look at this Facebook Marketplace. They're not actually as plentiful as I thought they might be. Kawasaki ZZR. See, the 1200 is the one I know well, and again, the 1200 gets much more of the limelight than the smaller engine 600 does. If you want the latest engine in this, you need the 2004 to 2007. That shares the same engine with the ZX6R, but if you want the older engine, you can save some money and easily pick one up, like this. Have a look. 1995 model, ZZR, listed a month ago, reduced from £1,400 to £1,200, and it's got an MOT for about 10 months. In the last 100 miles, it's had a huge amount of work done. New fork oil, new YSS rear shock absorber, new brake discs and pads. All the brake calipers have been completely stripped, sonic cleaned, carb stripped. Sonic cleaned. This bike has had everything done. It's even had new mirrors, new screen. The mileage shows 18,000, which is supported by MOTs. This is probably about as straight a bike as you can get. £1,200, 1995 model, and there's a very good chance you could push the owner down to £1,000. And that is a fun-looking bike for really not much money at all. Charlton, thank you. On to Sam now. Freddy on a recent trip to Mount Fuji in Japan and stopping off for some food en route. 3 bikers pulled in. The bike that took my eye was a Kawasaki KZ 1000. Armed with pidgin Japanese, I approached and struck up a conversation, which inevitably got me nowhere. Luckily, I shared some images from my phone of my Royal Enfield Classic 350, and their eyes all lit up. This is not a popular bike in Japan, but it prompted the owner of the KZ 1000 to fire up what I can only describe as his butter smooth bike. The engine was like nothing I'd ever heard before, and it got me thinking, with these bikes at around about the £10,000 mark in the UK, whether importing one might be cheaper. Like everything in Japan, most of the bikes I saw were spotless, and my thinking is that an import would have been very well looked after. Sam, I spent a while looking at imported Jeep Wranglers from Japan for this exact reason, because the Japanese love their vehicles, so there is an endless supply of Wranglers that you can find in Japan, and because in Japan they don't salt their roads, it means that you can pick up pretty much any year, any vehicle that you want. And there's going to be either no rust at all or minimal rust. I mean, the Jeep Wranglers that I was looking at from Japan, 2007, 2008 model, there wasn't a speck of rust on the underside. They looked brand new. So there are really good options available. It just comes down to the hassle. How much hassle are you willing to take to be able to find your vehicle in Japan and go through the paperwork to get it over to the UK? Probably I'm too lazy for that. So what I've done is gone onto Facebook Marketplace to see, Sam, what can I do to find as cost-effective a KZ as possible? Something as low as possible that's in running order, trying to beat that £10,000 mark. And I'm delighted to say I've done it. Kawasaki KZ Facebook Marketplace 1978 model. Take a look at this. Listed 13 days ago in the classic Kawasaki green. KZ 1000, £6,500. Bike in, look at this, bike in excellent condition with no issues. Sounds and rides superb. Just had new Avon Mark II tyres fitted, new battery. The paint is slightly faded, but that's fine. All viewings welcome. 21,000 miles on the clock. Beautiful condition. Bang on classic, this bike. We're talking about a really desirable classic for not that much money. £6,500. But this is where things get even more impossible to ignore. Prepare yourselves for this. Sit down, get a pencil and piece of paper if you're interested in what may turn out to be a bargain. I've done some looking here. I think this is a good price, but on top of that, bear in mind there is no MOT in the UK, so you don't have to pay for your annual check to make sure the bike is roadworthy. There is also no road tax, so you won't have to pay the £200 a year to legally be able to drive it on the roads. There is also no London ultra low emission zone payment, so you can freely ride into London, not pay a penny. That all sounds great, but I've got one final thing to tell you that I hope will seal the deal and get you looking at these bikes. I went on to compare the market and I took the liberty of doing an insurance quote for 1 year on one of these bikes, 3,000 miles a year, thinking that maybe it's a classic, maybe I'll get some kind of classic insurance. Are you ready? £57 a year insurance. £57 a year. That means all you're going to be paying for this bike, no MOT, no tax, basically no insurance as well. All you have to pay for is petrol and maintenance. So you could say, oh yes, but it's carbs, like that's more tricky. Look, find a classic motorcycle mechanic who knows how to work with carbs. That's going to be the only worry you have, making sure that you get the carbs looked after and you buy the right kind of fuel. But the savings that you're going to be getting everywhere else are so phenomenal, surely it's worth it. And bear in mind as well, this is a simple bike, no complicated, complex electronics. It shouldn't be difficult to get parts because this is a highly desirable bike with basic, solid mechanics. And it's Japanese. Moving on. Thank you. I was almost shaking with excitement when I found out those running costs. On now to Joel Fernandez. Freddy, it was my turn to go for a ride in Morocco. I wanted to put my 2000 Honda XL 650V, otherwise known as the Transalp, to the test. It seems to be assumed that this adventure is reserved for large capacity motorcycles. And in fact, I've ridden 5 BMW GS's, 3 1200s and 2 1250s, and a Honda Africa Twin 1100. And at no time did I feel that my bike's engine wasn't enough. The 24-year-old machine and its carburetors were up to the demands of the journey, and the ABS and ESP were not missed. And I think the 21-inch front wheel is the right choice for more difficult terrain. Joel. Brilliant, Joel. It's a true overlanding king, this. The reason the Transalp is so often the bike of choice for journeys like this is because this is still a bike that can be fixed at the side of the road by almost any mechanic in any town you may go through when you get out of the built-up areas into the desert-like scenery of Morocco. If you go with a brand new Multistrada, brand new Harley Davidson either, that's not getting fixed in Morocco. You take a good, honest, simple Honda Transalp, anyone is going to be able to help you out at the side of the road and fix it. And that's why these are still king. And that's why so often people still drive the old Land Rover Defenders, because it's simple engineering that most people can figure out and a mechanic's near the side of the road. Simplicity is best for journeys like that. Joel, congrats on completing it. Now, to wrap up last week's conversation, belt drive versus chain. This is where someone kindly sent in a question. Look, Has anyone done this? Has anyone converted their chain drive motorcycle to belt drive? How much does it cost? Who's done it? Is it actually a good thing to do? And also, what's it like in general, having a motorcycle with a belt? Is it so much better? More people than I thought came out and said, actually, I've done it, and this works very well. Take a listen to this. I'll start with Frank. Freddy, the belt drive on my Harley-Davidson Sportster lasts 100,000 miles or more. No chain oiling, no adjustment, no maintenance, no cleaning, animation, driveline, and no cleaning. Much cheaper in the long run than a chain drive. All motorcycles that are not shaft drive should really have been belt drive. Then on to Ran Matchloff. I got a belt drive fitted to my Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650 and it's great. Highly recommended. Ewan then, belt drive conversion done on my Interceptor 650, around £400. Absolutely love it. Jag continues, I have no idea why any manufacturer would opt for a chain now. A belt will last 4 times longer than a chain, require no oil, no cleaning whatsoever. It's quieter and safer and requires tightening only every 12,000 miles or so. It's just a better way all round. I would have happily paid an extra £500 to get my Triumph Speedmaster 1200 with a belt drive straight from the factory. Mark continues, my bike's belt drive, I've had it over 20 years and done 27,000 miles. Yes, I know it's been a bit of a garage queen, but still, in those years and during those miles, I have never adjusted or lubed the belt, as you don't need to. It's fantastic. And I'll wrap it up here with Sacco. I did a belt drive conversion on my Triumph Bobber with a kit from ARH. It wasn't cheap, but the consistent belt tension means the gear changes are smoother and the drop in noise without the clanking chain is substantial. You also don't have the mess and gunk from the chain lube. As some people said to me, look, the problem with a belt drive is if you're riding along and you're going for a long trip and you're out in the middle of nowhere with nothing around, what happens if the belt snaps? A few people said this to me, but I didn't really get that argument because a chain can quite easily snap as well. And it's just as easy to carry a belt with you, surely, than a chain if you're the type of person that likes to carry spares for every eventuality. If I'm going to be doing a long trip, for example, to Africa, and I want to take an extra belt with me, I can see here on the kit that he's bought, it's a 136 teeth belt, and it's a 1-inch diameter, or it's a 1-inch width. So all I need to do is type in 136 1-inch drive belt, and there's an endless supply on eBay. For example, this is for a Harley-Davidson Roadster, and I assume it's just a standard fit that would go on to the Triumph Bobber. You can get them for as low as £55, but this one's 66 quid. Buy one of those, put it into your baggage in case it may snap on a longer trip like some people seem to think it may do. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure that will negate any argument that people may have for belts snapping because they're really not that expensive. On now, Bike of the Week. This was such a close one, but this had to get it purely for the rarity. A left field choice for light off-roading. This is from Sean. Freddy, this is a 2021 Royal Enfield Bullet Trials Works Replica 500. That is the longest title of any bike I've had. A bit of a mouthful of a name, I know. It's a homage to Johnny Britton. It isn't going to go on a full trials, but it suits me fine to go on farm tracks and light gravel roads. The cost for this, with just 3,500 miles on it, was £2,300 British pounds. It isn't the fastest or lightest, but it is a bit different. I haven't seen one out on the roads, only in pictures, but this came up for sale for €3,800, but nobody was interested in it, so it stayed on sale for about 2 months. I already had 2 bikes, a 2022 Interceptor and a 1995 BMW F650, so I just watched this ad for the bike being slowly reduced Then I got an offer on my BMW, so freed up some space and some money. I made the offer of my maximum budget and a 2.5-hour drive each way, and she came home with me. All the best, Grandad on an Enfield, YouTube, Sean. Sean, you got a bargain there. Let's take a look at these. I remember when I was in Goa and I went to this incredible Royal Enfield dealer, destination dealership with cafe and other stuff. It was incredible. Parked up outside were 3 or 4 of these Trials replicas, and they were some of the coolest looking bikes I've ever seen. And to see 3 of them lined up, I'd never seen them before. I'd never heard of them. I didn't know what they were, but they looked so purposeful. I honestly thought that a specialist team had set these Bullet 500s up for some desert race. They really look the part. They look very purposeful, these bikes, and they are the first ones I've ever seen in my life. And the fact that I saw them in India at the Royal Enfield dealership, it's just ingrained them in my mind as incredibly cool bikes. I believe they started selling them in 2019, which is incredible because they do look like they're 50-year-old bikes. The funny thing is, I can't quite figure out if they've stopped making them, or if they're one of these funny models of bikes that you actually can still buy, almost as a special purchase. If you contact Royal Enfield and say, I'd like to order one of these Trials 500s, you can get them in 350 or 500cc form. I think 500cc is exclusively for Europe and the rest of the world, and 350 is for India. Facebook Marketplace, this is what you can find. And I'll save you a bit of time in case you try looking for multiple options. Ridiculously rare bikes to find. I found one, and even finding this one was not easy. So if you find one, if you're interested, you know what I was about to say? Don't mess about because they're not going to hang around. But that's a lie. They do hang around because Sean over in Ireland, he was just watching the price drop over the 2-month period. And the one I found here, listed over 3 weeks ago, price dropped from £3,600 to £3,400. But armed with the knowledge that Sean has kindly supplied here, these are not bikes, for one, that anyone really knows exists, and secondly, because of that fact, no one's buying them. So either take a punt at this one, offer a cheeky price on it, or if you can, wait it out, see how low it may go. Oh, they look so good. These cost, I think, £4,700, give or take, back in 2019 when they first came out. So they haven't dropped in value that much, but there you go, £3,400. And I'm going to wrap up this video, not with that, but where did I save it? Something else I found online for one of these. Here we go. Look at this. I'm wrapping the video up with this. MotoGB.co.uk. This is the company, I believe, that supply Royal Enfields in the UK. They've got one here advertised. Royal Enfield Classic 500 Trials 2024. So they still make these bikes, is what I have to assume from this. 0 mileage on the clock. Royal Enfield Classic 500 Trials, a rare find, unregistered, brand new Bullet 500 Trials in this awesome red and silver colorway. If you're after something a little different or a nice piece of art to put up in your office or living room, then this bike is for you. Currently unregistered, and we will register for the new owner. But please bear with us as it's in the hands of the DVLA. £6,000. I mean, look, it's not a bargain at £6,000. It's actually a decent chunk of money. But if we're looking at something that's genuinely unique, you're not going to get any more unique than that. And I will wrap it up there. Thanks all for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you as ever next week.